this between the time change and us doing it on a Wednesday, which is unusual, but it was the only day I could do this on my schedule. So we thought the recording will assist anyone else that might be interested. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you're showing up from, as you always hear my voice say. Before I get into having this conversation with you, I'd like to invite us just to take a nice couple of deep breaths to bring us to this position. I always want to recognize that before we do any work within this field, any trauma work, any relationship work, any group work, any one-on-one, it's about us to begin with ourselves in regulation, mindfully caring for our vagus nerve. So just taking a nice couple of deep breaths and pulling your shoulder back if you want so that you can really open up your chest for that oxygen to get into your system. Stretch your neck a little bit just to relax into this. Feel the weight of your body in your seat, or if you're standing, the weight of your feet on the floor, however it may be showing up today. And as you take a couple of nice deep breaths, I just want to go ahead and welcome you here to this particular space and arrive when you're ready. Welcome, Tabby.
Good morning. Thank you.
Thank you. So here we go. Before I introduce myself, I'll introduce you what we're talking about today. We're talking a bit about trauma-informed relationship coaching. It's one of the 2 new courses that we have put together this year. Well, actually last year, and we've run pilots on them. Lori, I believe, was in one of our pilots. She's always a great support of our work, and I trust her to assist me with knowledge around some of how the class is being delivered because she's an expert in that. And today we're just going to talk a little bit about navigating relationship intricacies. And that's really what the relationship coaching is about. And I want to make it clear from the beginning that I'm not talking specifically about intimate relationships. I'm talking about any relationship that involves more than one person. So we have a relationship with ourselves, but what we're talking about here is any interaction that we have within our environments. That can involve family, that can involve spouse or partner, that can involve employees, clients, colleagues, employers. So really diving into the intimate relationship or the intricate relationship about what's going on. And we want to look at it today a little bit from the advanced neuroscience and, of course, the trauma-informed coaching strategy. And one of the things I'm just going to invite while I introduce Susan and I and Charles, I'm going to just invite this question in the chat, if you will. And I was curious when I was putting this together, and I thought, what are the biggest challenges that you're seeing in relationship coaching if you happen to do it now? And if not, what do you think the biggest challenges might be if you were to undertake relationship coaching? So just in the chat, please share your thoughts. That way we'll have an opportunity to see what comes up. So what I'd like to do is, for anyone that does not know me, my name is Brad Hardie, and I am one of the co-founders of Moving the Human Spirit, and my business partner and dear friend and lifelong learner, because we've both been traveling down this path, is Susan Hogarth, and she's here with me as well. I'll allow her to introduce herself because she'll do a better job than I do. She knows I'm old now. My mind doesn't work the way it used to. But I am a master certified coach. I am a certified trauma professional. I have neurolinguistic programming, EQI. The work that we have encompassed is trauma-informed coaching certification, and we hold that in very different platforms. One of them is for a level 1 training. One of them is for trauma-informed coaching itself as an advanced course. Another one is trauma-informed relationship and also group coaching. And Susan and I both, I'll grab this one from her, are both certified trauma counselors, non-clinical. And that was an excellent course to give us a foundation and platform when we moved into some of this work. And I'll let beautiful Susan introduce herself because I'll do it less of a job. Thanks, Sue.
I don't think so, Brad. As Brad said, we've known each other a long time, actually since 2010, so quite a while ago. And I'm Susan Hogarth. If any of you have taken the level 1 certification or the Trauma Informed Certified Coach Advanced program, then you would have spoken with me prior. Charles is the one that will be having conversations mostly around the relationship and the group coaching. So, yeah, I don't really think there's anything more to say about me. But
Good.
Charles, please feel free to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Sue.
Will do. Thank you, Susan. So my name is Charles Maroney. I am part of the MTHS team. I'm also a co-facilitator. So sometimes you'll see me if you were in basics. Maybe I was assistants to either Tanya or Pauline with you. I am I'm a coach for the COPE program, which is Couples Overcoming Post-Traumatic Stress Every Day. This course in particular really helped me get a better understanding on how to coach in relationships. So Brad threw me into that blindly, to be very honest there. He was like, you can handle it. You can coach these couples. And then he introduced this course, which really changed my approach and how I communicate with couples and understanding their needs and understanding maybe some of the things that come up in relationships that are harder to discuss and how do we handle that as coaches. Without taking sides, of course, and remaining in a neutral position to allow them to sort things out for themselves. So I'm here to assist Brad today. I'll also be helping Susan on board. If anybody is interested in taking the course, you can reach out to either of us and we'd be happy to get you going. All right, I look forward to this.
Perfect. Thank you, Charles. So, hey, Lauren. Nice to see you there. So let's look at this. When we think about this, for anyone that does not know this, Moving the Human Spirit does work in trauma-informed certification. We are the first global leader in trauma-informed coach certification through the International Coaching Federation. They have accredited our courses. We've worked hard to be able to do that. And I always say, pardon me, it's not that I'm bragging, but I'm really proud of the fact that we initiated this with the International Coaching Federation. For those that are familiar with it, there was a time that we were not allowed to deal in trauma, and I think that we would not be servicing our clients to the utmost importance if we stayed in a place of not being able to wade into trauma, because the last time I checked, just about every client I've ever worked with has some form of a imprint. So the other thing that we are talking about here when it comes to our company is that we work actively with trauma survivors. Charles just mentioned some of it. So this isn't theory that we're working in, but what we do is put our courses together based on the best practices of what we see on the ground doing the work. And when I talk about working with trauma survivors, I'm referring to the general public, but also referring to a program that we run with Wounded Warriors. And that involves first responders, firefighters, RCMP, police officers, military. We also have done work with different Indigenous, First Nations, and Inuit groups. And we do a different series depending on the needs that come up for them. So we're very pleased to be able to be on the ground doing this work because it constantly influences what we're doing and how our courses change. This is what we'll touch on today. So these are the things I thought, if we bring people together and we're asking of their time, these are the things I think will be the most important for us to have a look at. And what it'll do is give you a little bit of a flavor about what it is that we are up to within these courses. So this particular relationship course, we look at the neuroscience of relationships and how trauma affects it. We also look at trauma-informed strategies for relationship coaching. We also look at relationship systems, labels, and family dynamics. And those play a really important part, not only in personal, intimate relationships that we have. They also play a huge part in how we engage with the world as a whole. And the last thing I'll leave you with today on our talk is that I want to touch on the TIRC 5-structure approach and how we work in relationship. And it is relevant to any relationship. I can't emphasize this enough. People oftentimes think that when we're talking about relationship coaching, that we're talking about the intimate relationships. We are talking about all types of relationships. And these 5 structured pieces apply to each type of relationship you will have in your life. So is everyone ready for me to keep talking? So I just wanted to touch a little bit on the neuroscience of it. Well, thanks, Mac. Sorry, my Mac has this new way of pushing everything across my screen. So I'm a bit of a neuroscience geek. Susan and I used to run a neuroscience interest group at the local hospital in Vancouver. They gratefully gave us space there. I don't know if anyone knows St. Paul's Hospital in Vancouver. They're very much an educational hospital, and they supported us. So we ran a group there for years, and it came out of the interest of neuroscience for us. Also, the ability to look at neuroscience and trauma. So one of the things that I like to do is look at understanding trauma's impact on relationships. And in this particular course, what we do is we explore how trauma shapes attachment styles and communication, but also emotional regulation. So trauma really influences how individuals form connections. We know that. Often leading to either insecure attachment, anxious, avoidant, or disorganized, we call it. And that can really affect our ability to trust. And it also affects our ability to communicate openly and regulate emotions effectively in relationships. So we take an opportunity within the course to really look at and explore some of how these styles show up. And we can talk about it in some instances as maladaptive behaviors. The other thing that we think about, of course, within all of our work, especially if you are a trauma-informed coach now, is that we talk about the role of the nervous system. And we talk about the nervous system in relationships and the science of regulating. And when we think about that, what we're talking about is how the nervous system shows up and plays a crucial role in the relational dynamics. So when individuals feel threatened or unsafe, the sympathetic nervous system, of course, goes into what we refer to as fight or flight. And this often leads to conflict. And it also leads to withdrawal or hypervigilance, whereas a regulated parasympathetic state fosters what we're looking for in relationships. We're looking for that connection, we're looking for safety, and we're looking for that emotional openness that is so important when we are trying to form substantial relationships, regardless of whether or not that's a workplace, a home environment, a family environment, or in groups of friends. The other thing that I like to look at, of course, is that co-regulation between relations. One thing that we talk about quite a bit is how that co-regulation being that process where one person's nervous system helps regulate another's. So we often see this in secure relationships where partners are calm or partners soothe each other. Oftentimes, if we are in stable relationships, we will go to our partners for soothing, or our partners will notice when we are dysregulated. So what we're really looking at here is the opposite of that, where we also see unresolved trauma, which can lead to emotional volatility. And it also leads to what we call reactivity and detachment in relational interactions. So you can see when we talk about this, regardless of where it is, workplace, family, or intimate relationships, how much this can separate anyone that's trying to form a constructive relationship. The other thing that we look at within the trauma-informed relationship coaching, and I really love this one, is we look at the impact of memories from past relationships and how that shapes current interactions with people that we have. So there's always this unconscious memory from the past relationship, especially early childhood experiences. So we look at that, we create internalized relational patterns that influence present behaviors. That's a little bit about that maladaptive behavior that we see. There's also the influence of present behavior, which often leads individuals to repeat past cycles of attachment, especially attachment wound, or types of conflict, if you will. So that's something that we love to look at within these. It's a bit of a deeper conversation that goes a little bit beyond the TICCA. Well, actually, to what Lori will be able to agree with, it goes way beyond that because we go very deeply into some of these topics. The other thing that we're looking at is how we as coaches can help clients develop neuroplasticity-based relationship resilience. And that's something that's a bit of a mouthful, but what we're talking about there is how we guide our clients to recognize and reframe automatic emotional responses. And that's really important to be able to start building those neuroplasticity pathways in the brain. Because what we're trying to do is build a new way of identifying. We're looking at being able to work through somatic practices, develop new relational patterns, and coaches can really support in doing that. The brain's ability in neuroplasticity to form new patterns is so amazing. And that's some of what the neuroscience that we discuss in the course and talk about the potential. For me, this is very possibility driven when I think about the potential of neuroplasticity and how we can form new behaviors that are more in line with how we want to live our life. Any questions so far? Should check in to see if everyone's okay. Is everyone good? And we talked a little bit about, in the conversation that we're having in the chat, communication and trust, some of the things that we look at in struggling with relationships, relationship coaching, looking at contempt. We're looking at heightened anxiety due to world events. Yeah, Lori, that is so present right now for us, especially in engagements in general public even. Charles says communication and trust. Ritu says trust. Trust is so fundamental for us to form relationships, connection, self-awareness, and outgrowing levels of emotional wounds. Yeah, beautiful. Awesome. So when we think about this trauma-informed coaching strategies when we're moving forward, we're really talking about going beyond the traditional one-on-one coaching. So the trauma-informed lens is really crucial when coaching couples or individuals in relational dynamics. So even though we might be working in relationship work, we may be having some of our people as one, or we may be doing it within groups of 2 or 3 people at one time. So a trauma-informed approach really helps us recognize how past wounds shape relational patterns, helps us look at ensuring that clients feel understood and guided forward to that reinforcing, not reinforcing trauma responses. So really looking at it from that trauma-informed lens. We also have that ability, hello, Don. We also have that ability to look at flashbacks, triggers, and dysregulation. We're really here helping clients identify and regulate some of that emotional flashback, any intruding thoughts that they might have. We also look at being able to normalize triggers because really they are a response in the nervous system. It's not that the body is doing something against you. It's actually working exactly the way it's supposed to. It's working exactly the way the nervous system is supposed to work. Sometimes we think that there's something faulty in the nervous system. The reality is it's doing exactly what it was built to do. And we want to be able to work towards nervous system regulation with our clients before they engage in relational conflict resolution. So really having that place of calm before engagement. The other thing that I think about are some of the practical coaching techniques that we do. And that's really looking at helping clients identify when they are regulated or overwhelmed. And sometimes we don't always recognize that. So really bringing an awareness, which is what we do in coaching, that ability to bring awareness to the current situation, or sometimes looking at particular instances where we want to understand where we are in regulated states versus overwhelm. And we can do that several different ways. And we talk a little bit about Dr. Dan Siegel's window of tolerance. We talk about Stephen Porges's polyvagal theory. Dr. Porges's work is certainly interesting when it comes to relationship coaching, because we are engaging in social connection. And that is the area where he believes is the social engagement and the calm state of anyone in engagement in relationship. We also look at being able to guide people in the somatic strategies. So one thing that is interesting in relationships is that we work with understanding not only how I regulate, but how other people in the relationship regulate as well. So being able to think about the mind, body, and spirit of other people as we engage with them. And somatic strategies, of course, utilize those techniques such as breath work. We look at movement, tactile grounding, and that can help clients regulate their nervous system. It can also help learn clients in how to help regulate one another if they happen to be getting into dysregulation. So it just allows for a much more balanced and concise engagement in relationships themselves. And interestingly enough, yesterday we were talking about this exact thing in a corporate setting, and how we might invite in some of these ideas to be able to, what I like to call, set the stage for engagement. And we can do that anywhere across the board. We can do that from parent to child. We can do that from grown family. We can do that in intimate relationship. And we can do that in corporate business leadership settings. And the other one, of course, some of you may know that I have spoke about this. Some of you maybe think to nauseam, but it's that ability to really reframe narratives. And that is such a beautiful place for us to sit and be when I think about being able to reframe our narrative, shifting the blame to self-awareness and healing. And for me, one of the most magical things we do as coaches is to be able to help clients shift from perspectives of victimization and woundology and move into a place of curiosity and self-awareness. It's so empowering for them to be able to take accountability and healing within the relationships that they have. It's a powerful place to be. How's my time? Oh, okay. I'm going to be mindful of everyone's time today. The other fun thing that I like to do, of course, is that we look at family system theory. You can't not. And that's discovering how early attachment wounds really influence adult relationship behavior. The 9-year-olds in the staff room, if you will, as we all take our child with us, regardless of where we are. So really looking at early attachment experiences and how they shape individuals and form and maintain relationships, insecure attachment styles. We touched on that a bit in TICCA. We talked about beliefs around I am enough and authentic self. We also look at maintaining these different types of relationships through some of these attachment styles. You know, we have abandonment issues, difficulty trusting people, emotional avoidance in adult relationships. It's very real. And it comes from this state of safety, of wanting to be safe. The other thing, of course, that we look at is recognizing generational trauma and its effect on relational patterns. And that's something that's really real for us. Generational trauma passes through families via learning behaviors, emotional patterns, unspoken narratives, often resulting in, of course, doing what? Repeating relational struggles. We're performing the same thing. We also look at it in neuroscience where we have, well, not myself personally, but I read lots of articles on the cellular transfer of trauma. And in indigenous communities, what they call this blood memory. So it's interesting to think about that in coordination. So this is really looking at how we can work with codependency, emotional suppression, or conflict avoidance. And, looking at some of the labels that are there, some of the enmeshed relationships. We think about things such as invisible loyalty or enmeshment, differentiating in relationships. It's really interesting stuff. Invisible loyalty, of course, refers to that unconscious commitment to family patterns. I've talked to people before to ask them where their belief system comes from, and they've said, well, that's just what my family does. So it's really looking at these things. These enmeshments occur when boundaries are blurred. If we don't have safe boundaries within our relationships, and it leads to this emotional overdependence, which I don't know if any of you seen that. I've talked a lot about some of our generations actually having that dependence. And the differences that it doesn't allow for the differences as humans for them to then develop and maintain, that really strong sense of self that we are looking for, that we desire, while staying connected in relationships. We're allowed to be different, and it's about the celebration of that. And again, those labels and rewriting our stories. I'm too much. I'll always be alone. I'm not enough. Those labels about how we look at ourselves. And those form, of course, from trauma, creating self-fulfilling cycles sometimes. The POW is gone because we believe these types of labels. And we're here to really, try to look at that and how we can then look at these negative beliefs about ourselves and see how that affects them in their engagement in their relationship. And it can lead to things like self-sabotage, avoidance, unhealthy attachment patterns. If you've ever spoken to a client who says, I don't know how I seem to always be attracted to the same thing. And of course, what we're doing is we're really looking at tools on how to reframe some of these narratives. It starts with this self-perception, stepping into these empowering relational dynamics that we look at. And I love that. I love being able to do that work with clients, especially if the relationship means something to them. And work relationship, family relationship, intimate relationship, and parent-child relationships usually always mean something to them. We don't treat them lightly. They're in our lives every day. So we look at some of that way of thinking about inner child work and somatic practice to help shift people's perspectives from victimization to self-awareness. And some of the interpersonal conflicts through that trauma lens. How we can look at it and really inform clients around their nervous systems, how they can engage with other. In one-on-one, we spend a lot of time figuring out how they can engage with self or how they can manage with self. And this can go a little bit further into the emotional intelligence and emotional maturity that is so valuable for us to know. Not only self-engagement, but other engagement. And of course, we do that, again, mind, body, and soul, looking through those techniques of deep breathing and grounding, some of the self-compassion practices that we need and rely on. And of course, as I promised, this is how we do this 5-structure approach. It's very interesting. This happens in every single relationship that you'll ever have in your life. You'll have an introduction, which is really understanding personal histories and communication. And that's where individual experiences and the ways people express themselves are understood and how we communicate. We'll look at building, and that's really about establishing the safety and trust and emotional regulation. We do that within our relationships. So interesting. It's a foundation of a healthy relationship. So being able to really look at this, thinking about the ability to regulate emotions and ensure stability. We're trying to come from a place of being able to build on the relationship. So introduction phase in learning, building in foundational work. Love and connection. And people are like, well, I don't know if I love when my boss or being in with my coworkers. It's okay. The reality is that there is a connection there, whether you realize it or not. You are influenced by the relationships that you keep. And this is that deepening emotional bond through secure attachments. Even in workforces, family relations, intimacy, child-parent relationships, there has to be a love connection for it to flourish. Otherwise, we do not have a relationship. And it's really looking at strong relationships, whether it's intimate, familial, platonic, and really looking at a nurtured, secured attachment where the individuals feel valued and supported and heard. And they foster a much deeper trust and mutual care. I'm taking the intimacy out of relationship. So just thinking about it and all these other applications that we work in, how it shows up. And of course, then we wouldn't be able to do this work if it wasn't about growth. So really navigating conflicts, looking at setting boundaries, how we evolve together. How do we set the stage for the best practice moving forward? Healthy relationships require the ability to handle disagreements constructively. It's not that it's going to be woo-woo and no conflict. We will always have grounds where we will have to disagree or agree to disagree. Set respectful boundaries. So healthy for all of us. Adapt to change. Allow individuals to grow both independently and together. You know, identity first of self and then identity with other. So important. And sustainability, because that's all the work that we do in coaching is we want to work to get rid of our clients, we say. We don't want codependency. We want sustainability. We want to be able to look at how we create a long-term relational health and resilience with them so that they can then go out and have relationships that are empowering for them. And this, you know, requires, of course, maintenance, and we have to work on relationships. That's required consistently. And we need mutual support, especially within trauma areas. The other deep thing for this, for me, is that I know that trauma cannot heal by itself. So relationships are incredibly important in the healing process, regardless of what type of relationship we're talking about. So really considering how we adapt and move through these things, and we build the course on these 5 structures, and we dissect them as we go through and look at them in each individual way. Do you have any questions that I can assist with? Any thoughts, insights, queries? Do we look at the pattern of relationships and think about how we can move our trauma-informed coaching into it and really support individuals, couples, corporations when we're dealing with interactions of 2 or 3 people? I'm going to just take that as a yes. So what we went through today, I just want to touch on this a little bit for you. It's the neuroscience of relationship and trauma, you know, looking at attachment styles, emotional regulation, dealing with the sympathetic and parasympathetic, those things that we know in trauma, trauma-informed strategies for relationships. Again, dealing with some of what comes up in relationships, narrative reframing, looking at ACE scores, adverse childhood experiences, how those influence our behaviors, how they influence how we hold relationships currently in our life, looking at relationship systems, labels, and family dynamics. That's always the funnest for me. I would just like to do a whole course on that sometime. It's like that is really where the meat and potatoes are. It's like we are looking at the course of our life and how it has influenced us in all of these ways. Family dynamics, of course, intergenerational. Also, the 5 structure approach, which gives us the guideline to be able to coach through and to be able to look at what it is we're doing. So really, I think about it as a beginning, a middle, and an end. So thinking about that, how do you believe you can support your clients in the impact of trauma and their relationship? Really having a thought on that when you think about it. Feel free to share that in the chat. I'm just going to come off of my screen sharing, but I want to just leave you with thanking you for being here. And of course, you can reach Susan. And just a reminder that our alumni have a 15% discount for any course beyond that.
Brad, can I say something?
Sure, Lori.
I just wanted to say, when I signed up for this course last year, I wasn't quite sure, why I signed up. But your comment today about how this is important, not just for therapists, but for people working in the corporate world, because all relationships are impacted, was huge for me. And I've been able to use it really in doing coaching in the workplace and really expanding it to that corporate look. And what happens if you are working with a leader who is, bringing their childhood with them every day, and how do you support them and yourself? So if anybody's concerned, it's very applicable.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you very much for that. Any more questions? Thanks a lot, Lori. It's always so great to hear some comments. For those that might not have had an opportunity to take the course yet, does anyone have any questions or queries for us? I see that Charles and Susan are answering some there. Yeah, Dawn, you're so thankful.
The prerequisite to this course, Brad, is a trauma-informed coach certification. So whether it's our trauma-informed coach certification or another trauma-informed coach certification that is recognized.
Yeah, something that the prerequisite is really about being able to, we're not going to go into the bases of trauma and what we would have done in our other courses. So talking about the categorizations and why some people suffer more than others. And we'll touch on nervous systems, but maybe not to the extent. So we won't go into the deeper pieces of it because it would be too much of a repeat, if you will. And the other interesting thing to think about if you're moving into a space of reaccreditation, both any of the courses that we are talking about currently that are not our CPHR courses or our SHRM courses, these have 40 CCEs for reaccreditation. So if you are getting to a place of reaccreditation and you need your 40 CCEs, just to know that as well. It's an 8-session course, which fulfills that requirement from the International Coaching Federation. So, but yes, anyone that has knowledge and certification in actually trauma work would be able to take these secondary courses. It's a bit of a deeper dive, if you will. So, thank you, Josie. Any other questions before I allow you to turn to your regularly scheduled program?
Just, I don't know if you mentioned it, I was a little bit distracted in the chat, but our start dates are April 1st for this course on
Oh,
Tuesday. I believe it's twice a week, right, Brad? Tuesdays and
April
Tuesday
1st,
Tuesday and Friday.
Fridays. Yeah.
3 to 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So that would be 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah.
And it's live. We have
Yes, it will. Our courses will. I wish they were in person sometimes, but yes, all of our courses will be interaction for sure. That is the richest form of education for me and Susan, and it's like it's only secondary to actually getting you all together and being able to have a space and share with you. But this is good for us that are all global now to be able to work on the internet virtually. So it certainly has enriched my life in ways I couldn't have imagined at the beginning. So if there's no more questions, Charles has put the information in the chat. Please feel free to reach out to me. Feel free to reach out to Susan. Charles will be here for a couple of days, and then he has obligations that will take him out of the country for a while, and then he will be back after that. So between the three of us, if you have any questions, we are happy to answer them for you. And to that, I'll bid you a farewell. Thank you guys for coming today. Such a
Thanks,
pleasure.
everybody, for
you.
joining us.
Thank you.
Oh.
Bye.
Oh.